Clark Lea has been awarded AP Midseason Coach of the Year. And after Georgia State, this was not on my bingo card.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. So today we're going to kind of expand on what Kurt and I talked about earlier this week. But we're going to look at Vandy's 2-minute defense. We're going to kind of explore what Vandy needs to do on that side of the ball in those type of situations because they'll need it throughout the stretch. What's the quarterback plan on Saturday? What are you going to do? But first of all, big time congrats to Clark Lea on being awarded the AP Midseason Coach of the Year, something that none of us really had and none of us really would have guessed, especially after the Georgia State game. So, I've talked about it since January, really since Clark Lea started making moves. The journey to this point has been very, very smooth for Clark Lea. From the end of the season until now. Before that, since he stepped foot on Vanderbilt's campus, it has been very tumultuous and has left lots of doubt. And for him to get to this point is amazing because I don't think any Vandy fan out there or any fan in college football, for that matter, would have thought we'd be sitting here talking about this, right? So you start your career off, you go 2-10. Right, you don't win any conference games. Then you go 5-7 the next year. You surprise a few. You win all your non-conferences. You make it to a bowl, or you almost make it to a bowl. I think you maybe qualified just by way of like there wasn't enough 6-6 teams. Then the next year 3, you go back to 2-10, and it is even worse of a 2-10 than your first year. Because there was no hope. You got shellacked by UNLV. You have your only 2 wins were a very tight game against Hawaii and a game that was just very lackluster against Alabama State. And then you get pretty much ran out of the freaking building in every other game. So at this point, coming into year 4, so it's November of 2023, and I have just signed on to take on Locked On Vandy. So I'm sitting here going, okay, I'm taking this show with the football team at an all-time low. This will be interesting. Like when I took over, I thought I was going to jump right into a coaching search. Like that's where I kind of thought everything was. So he got rid of both coordinators. He took over. His first move was taking over the defense. Okay. And honestly, that's what he does best. And I thought that was the best move that he could have made. Okay. And this is the journey of him being midseason coach of the year. This is why I think, Vandy's in good hands. My prediction is very, very safe of getting to a bowl game. I think it's a near reality, and I think they're going to pull that off. But his journey to being named midseason coach of the year has been amazing. Right. And for him to rise up out of that rock bottom canyon, bottom of the whatever you want, bottom of the barrel, however you want to describe it, whatever idiom you want to use to describe it. He was in the abyss, and he was about to ride off into the sunset as a defensive coordinator in the Big 12 somewhere. I don't know, or in the Big 10. But he was going to be a defensive coordinator after this year, and he was just gonna. The head coaching thing didn't work out for him, yada, yada, yada. Like that was kind of already the narrative that had been kind of spun by everybody. And everybody was kind of like, okay, well, maybe he's not head coaching material for XYZ. Right. So he takes over the defense, right? He's like, okay, well, I'm at least, if this thing's not going to go right, I'm going to at least have my controls on the defense. We're going to at least play defense with some identity. Okay. And then came the search for an offensive coordinator. And it led him to Tim Beck because, hey, we need to do something a little bit different. We need to have an identity on that side of the ball too. We need to be tough, physical, and different. and he found Tim Beck at New Mexico State. And then the flood of New Mexico State people came in. Pavia came, Jerry Kill came, I don't know, in whatever order, they all came over, right? Berlowitz actually preceded Pavia, actually, as a quarterback from there. You had Nate Johnson come in. He was the first. I think he was the first offensive player. No, check that. Stephen Lasoya, offensive line, was the first offensive player. But it was like a string of defensive players, and then it was Nate Johnson, then it was Jerry Kill, then it was Diego Pavia coming in, and then those receivers. But you get a flood of transfers. You hire a great staff. You hire Jerry Kill, and suddenly you replace strength and conditioning with Coach Robbie Steiner. You start your new program right after Christmas. And honestly, those are the moves. Those are foundational pieces that really set this season in motion. In January, when they made those moves, I'm like, okay, I like what I'm seeing. Coach Steiner had resurrected an identity for Georgia Southern. Okay, so he's doing it. And all this is because Clark was self-aware of, hey, whatever I was doing previously was not working, and he was like, okay, you know what? I need to make some changes. I don't know how these changes are going to go, but we got to do something. We've got to get some sort of identity. And he found three pieces, I think, that gave him that identity. And then from a player's perspective, found that piece in Diego Pavia that gives this team, much less the offense, an identity. And so that being said, it set the wheels in motion, right? You had camaraderie. You had a really tough program that pushed them physically, that pushed them mentally, that pushed them socially and emotionally, and really bonded this team together. Spring practice was extremely competitive, and there was a lot of hitting. There was a lot of just guys going back and forth, competing, and then going back to being friends after it was all said and done, because that's what they knew they had to do that to make sure they were in the best possible situation and best possible scenario. So they had a great spring practice. They had a great summer. Pavia really kind of comes in and officially takes over the team. That's when and he wasn't yet named quarterback one, but we all knew what was going to happen. But then training camp comes, they compete. Nate Johnson gets some great reps, and they make that whole deal. And then Virginia Tech. And that's when everything was like, that's when it was all validated, right? Everybody in the program believed, but it wasn't until they got that first win that belief was locked in. Because if they'd have gone out and got shellacked against Virginia Tech, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this. Clark Lea would be on the hot seat, all that stuff. But that win against Virginia Tech set all this in motion, right? And then they learned a hard lesson at Georgia State, and they haven't looked back since, right? Close one against Missouri, almost got it. They learned how to finish. They learned how to play in 2-minute situations. And then here we go. This has been one of the best coaching jobs in the entire country, bar none. I mean, this is a runaway award. I've never heard of Midseason Coach of the Year, but it's a thing now. And Clark Lea has run away with it. And he's making a strong case for National Coach of the Year, because to bring Vanderbilt from where they were to where they are, this whole journey has been amazing, right? The coaching job that it's taken to form an identity, to get them to play in the identity, and to get them to play for 4 quarters in this identity and not fall apart when everyone in the world thinks and knows Vandy's going to fall apart. They don't. Okay, they don't. And even in the loss to Missouri, they made Missouri beat them. There's a difference between falling apart and losing and getting beat, right? There's a difference. I know technically it still counts as a loss, but there's a difference. And the difference is in the mindset of how you feel afterward. You're disappointed, but you know you're there. Or you're just disappointed and it's okay. We're light years away from them, right? Those are the two mindsets. Vandy knew when they walked off the field in Missouri, they let one go. They let one go that they shouldn't have. And they knew it. And instead of wallowing, they came out and beat Alabama. And then instead of getting complacent, we beat Alabama, season's over, yay, goalpost in the river. Nope, on the road, beat Kentucky. Convincingly. And it was a 20-13 game, so on the scoreboard it wasn't convincing, but Vandy was in control of that game, which is something you rarely see. Vandy has never been in control of any game in quite some time. They were in total control of that game against Kentucky. They were. I don't care what you say. They were in control of that game. And they never relinquished it. And Kentucky could never get it back. So the coaching job that Clark Lea has done to get him to this point has been amazing. Defensively, he's pressing all the right buttons. He has a limited roster. They haven't had time to build it to a certain point to where you have quality depth. And that's nothing surprising. But the fact that he has put his guys in a position with stellar scouting, he's built his front office guys, his off the field role guys. He's built a really good support staff there that has helped prepare these guys to be in these situations, and they don't panic. That's the biggest thing. The mindset is they don't panic, and they don't they get up and they're like, hey, we just keep doing what we're doing, man. Like, it's a oiled machine. It's like they act like they've been there before, and they haven't. They have not been there. Last year, they weren't even close. And even if they did get close, they would fall apart very early. And it was just bad. It was a bad nucleus, bad everything. And Clark Lea seemed very distant. But he's even acting different. He's more engaged. He's more into it, it seems like. And he knows it. And he's got a lot of confidence going. And the point of all of that is that his journey, albeit extremely rough road, has led him to this point to where now everything's starting to kind of click and everything's starting to kind of fall in place. And it's well-deserved for him because he's been through a rough time and he's doing it at his alma mater, which anytime a coach gets their alma mater, they deserve to make it the best they can possibly make it. For a lot of people that are in that situation, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But for Clark Lea, it's now finally starting to turn in his favor. For Kirby Smart, it worked at Georgia. He's an alum. And so on and so forth, like these guys that take over their programs that they used to play at. So, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, he won a national championship, played at Michigan. It worked out for him. He was one that was, I'm not saying Clark Lea's going to win a national championship just yet, but, Clark Lea is well on the way to getting to a bowl game, which is the first step to being a winning program. And hats off, man. Congratulations. You earned it. You deserve it. And that's all there is to it. So, but his next big decision is, what's he really going to do at the quarterback position on Saturday? We'll answer that in a second. Stay with me. All right, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, guess what? You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Bets I like to place, occasionally I like to play parlays because I'm stupid. But I do like anytime touchdowns. I do like all the player props you can do, like receiving yards, carries, rushing yards, things like that. Quarterbacks, passing yards. I do like to play in the player props. Very rarely do I go with the spread. Very rarely do I go over unders, things like that. Some of the obvious ones I'll take. Some of the surefire winners I'll take. But all of that. Again, you get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, welcome back. It's the Locked On Vandy podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen. Each and every day, make sure you make Locked On SEC your next listen with Chris Gordy. All right, we talked about Clark Lea. He's the midseason coach of the year. Much deserved after the journey that he took. He's earned it for sure. And hopefully many more of those awards to come. Hopefully the end of the season Coach of the Year award comes his way, which means he's probably won 7, possibly 8 football games. So that'd be amazing if that happened. So anyway, but more importantly, or not more importantly, but importantly, for this Saturday's game, okay, in order for any of this to really have any credence, like if Vandy goes out and loses to Ball State, this episode just completely sucks, right? This episode's a flop. But anyway, they have to focus on Ball State. Check out yesterday's episode, and I'll tell you why. But the quarterback plan for Saturday, what is it? Well, I'll tell you what it is. Diego Pavia is healthy. He's practicing, probably a little sore, but I think the goal is to get him going and build up enough of a lead, if you can, to get him out as early as you can, because you do need to build depth. It's not about necessarily getting him. He is banged up a little bit. You would love to get him some rest, but you got to get, against Ball State in these games, you have to be able to get in a position where you can get other guys some work. And if you can't do that, I think you're wasting opportunities, so that if something actually does happen, Nate Johnson or Drew Dickey or whoever your plan is, should Diego Pavia go down for a long period of time, is ready. I think that's possibly Nate Johnson. He's been developing, so we'll see where he's at. Hopefully he gets more than 2 snaps this time, if they get into a situation where they can change quarterbacks. But I think the goal is to get Pavia as much work as you can for them to be able to cook up a big lead, which hopefully will happen as well. And then you can get in some of these other guys, some of these down the line guys. But the plan is to play Diego Pavia as long as you need to. But I wouldn't be surprised if Diego Pavia at some point, if he took a big hit to get him out, because you need him against Texas. All right. But if he takes a big hit to get him out, because you don't need some slappy from Ball State rolling up his leg or giving him a concussion because somebody wants to take a cheap shot on one of the most popular players in college football right now and get their 5 seconds of fame, and now you've got Diego Pavia down for 2 or 3 weeks. That's not good for anybody. So you need to figure out a plan to get Nate Johnson as many reps as you can, to get Drew Dickey even as many reps as you can, and then hopefully you're well off enough to be able to get these freshmen, Muschamp and St. Hilaire, reps as well. So that's the plan to me at quarterback. But I think you get Diego Pavia in a situation like I think I hear people worrying like, hey, Vandy's going to overlook this game. Had Georgia State not happened, I think that's a distinct possibility, because had Georgia State not happened, Vandy's sitting at 5-1, 6-0 at this point, and they're probably really feeling themselves a little bit. And I think it would have turned into something that is unbearable. And I think it's something that would have been like a freight train coming at them. As Dan Campbell says, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. The light that appears is a freight train coming at you. And this game would have come at Vandy like a freight train had Georgia State not already happened. Georgia State was the freight train in this case, because they come off after 2 games. They're really feeling themselves. So I don't think they're going to let that happen again. Clark Lea's not going to let that happen again. They're at home, which is different. And they know what's at stake here, right? They know that in order to make a bowl game, this is a game they have to win. Okay, because you can't count on winning with the remaining schedule that they have. You cannot bank on winning 2 of those games. You would love to, but you can't bank on it. You're banking on getting your 5th win this Saturday, so that the pressure is really only on to win 1 of your next 5. 2 of your next 5 would be great. 3 would be a bonus. 4 would be insane. 5 would be Clark Lea's got a lifetime contract, because that means you've beaten LSU on the road, you've beaten Tennessee, and you've beaten Texas. Tall order. But to get to a bowl game, which is what I've predicted from the jump, I'm still with that prediction. I'm still on that prediction. You have to, I think you have to get Diego Pavia going, get him going early, get them starting fast so that he can come out. So Vanderbilt needs to treat every game from here on out, including this Saturday, like it's a bowl game, like it's a potential win or go home, like a playoff type atmosphere, right? Because they want to make a bowl game. And they have to treat every game with a sense of urgency, even if the opponent, you're 26.5 point favorites. How do you handle that? I'm going to address that on a different episode, probably, or on the last episode of the week. But how do you handle that? That's something that you have to be able to. That's the next hurdle. Like, you handle the road environment, you started learning how to manage that. I think you'll be better at that going down the stretch run here. But now, how do you handle being a massive favorite? Not a massive underdog. Massive favorite. How do you handle it? We're going to find out because they weren't massive favorites against Georgia State, which was kind of weird too. That was just a weird situation. But now they're massive favorites. So what do? You know, how does this team react? Do they press? Are they feeling themselves a little bit after the last couple of weeks? You know, where's the vibe out of the team? I've heard it's been a really good week of practice so far, so that's promising as well. But I think it's interesting. But I'm interested also, and I'm glad that the 2-minute defense has been much improved. So we're going to examine that part of the defense. That's something that they're going to need in their tool belt down the stretch, because they're going to be in some tight games from here to the end of the season. And how many of those tight games are going to come down to making a last 2-minute stop, which they were unsuccessful in doing against Georgia State. They were successful in doing against Kentucky their last time out. So we'll kind of, like, what do they do differently? We'll examine that next. Okay, here we go. Guess what? Your sex life is important. Bet you never thought you'd hear me say that. And your schedule is busy, but you don't have time to go to the doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through HIMS, you can get personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. HIMS is changing men's health care by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. HIMS provides access to a range of doctors' trusted ED treatments like chewables, hard mints, and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics are up to 95% cheaper. Yeah, you can get this 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, and there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits, because we all know that's a problem. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds and thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find the right ED option that works best for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for the safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See the website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on the product and subscription plan. I think I was supposed to read that faster. All right, we are back. We are wrapping up the show here on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. Make sure you make Locked On SEC your next listen. SEC Squads comes out. That's going to be released very, very soon. So that was a fun episode. In this episode, like, it shows how just kind of tricky the SEC has been this season, and just how weird it's been, because there's no team you're just like, oh, yeah, they're elite. Like, there's no team that's like that right now. Texas is the closest thing, but do we really know? We'll find out this weekend. But so I want to look at 2-minute defense, because it's been an interesting thing. It's been a killer and a lifesaver in the same season, which is the two extremes, right? Against Georgia State, it was atrocious. We didn't know what we were doing. We couldn't cover anybody. We couldn't get pressure on the quarterback. We actually drew a targeting penalty, and we just let too many chunk plays hit down the field. The coverages weren't right, and just the whole operation of the 2-minute drill from a defensive perspective was terrible. Now, fast forward to Kentucky. It's 2013, and Kentucky needs to drive to get on the board and tie, right, to send it to overtime. They had to drive the field. Well, Kentucky's offense has been relatively successful throughout the night. They've been able to move the ball, but not consistently enough to get in the end zone, consistent enough to win. So Vandy had that going in their favor when they lined up. But Clark Lea knew that Kentucky really, and he was able, and this is coaching, this is adjustments, this is coaching, in-game coaching. iPads has been a lifesaver. But they knew that Kentucky had no identity. They knew Kentucky really didn't know what they wanted to do and how to attack, because Kentucky was trying things left and right. And Kentucky was discombobulated. They got penalties. They couldn't get out of their own way. And Vandy took advantage of that. And that's not saying, well, Vandy got lucky that Kentucky shot themselves in the foot, because I know that's probably one of the narratives, like, oh, you're lucky, right? Well, no, Kentucky hadn't really done much all game. Like, how are we lucky? Like, Kentucky doesn't really have an identity offensively, and Kentucky fans tried to fight me on that, but they don't. They don't. They don't know what they're doing offensively. They don't know what they want to do offensively. It's obvious, right? Even as McCready and Siski are like, oh, don't criticize play calling. Well, guess what? It was obvious, man. They don't know what they want to do. And that's a problem. If they want to win games, they have to know what they want to do offensively. That's a problem. It's it's a situation in their defense where I think too many coaches play this prevent coverage where they just get everybody back, and they don't really focus on putting pressure on the quarterback to make a throw. He's allowed to sit back there and pick off plays 20, 25 yards at a time, because everybody's back and nobody's really, they just want to keep everything in front. Whereas, like, yeah, you can drop your safeties back. You can be deep-minded, but I still think you have to have that air of just for psychological effect, like, we're not relenting, right? Because there's something to, like, you getting up there and, most times you're in those situations, you're expecting to have a lot of cushion and to be able to get, like, quarterbacks can get in a rhythm like that. I don't think people realize that. But if a quarterback can get in a rhythm throwing 5-yard hitches that turn into 10-yard gains, you can move the ball down the field pretty quick. And then once a quarterback gets into rhythm, now the defense has to react, get back up, and really start to kind of play real defensive again, because now they're in range. And then that gives the offense the upper hand, because the offense is in a rhythm, and now the defense is scrambling. And that's how those situations normally, they give up the field goal, they give up the touchdown, or, it's one of those situations to where it almost seems too easy. And I think Vandy got in that situation a little bit against Georgia State. They played a little bit too soft of coverage. And I think they somehow miscommunicated, or somehow didn't get the right call in, or there was some sort of breakdown somewhere where they left one guy one-on-one. And you didn't have much of a pass rush, so the quarterback was able to sit back there and toss it up. And they moved the ball. They ripped the ball down the field, because Vandy was in, like, prevent mode and conservative mode and all that stuff. So against Kentucky, they weren't. Against Kentucky, they were flying at the quarterback. They were putting pressure on Brock Vandagriff. They were making him get rid of the ball. They're like, nope, you're not hanging back here. You're not getting in a rhythm. We're going to put pressure on your offensive line to protect. And when they did, hold, right? Kentucky started shooting themselves in the foot, because Vandy put a lot of stress on them. And this is an offense that's proved that when you put stress on them, they can operate. Ole Miss failed to put stress on them in key situations, and they were able to go down and get the points that they needed. Other times, Ole Miss was able to put stress on them, and Kentucky looked like a completely lost out there. But you give them a little confidence, and then they don't look so lost. But that's what I really like. Like, I think, Vandy has found something a little bit with the 2-minute scheme. And I think it a lot has to do with who they're playing against. Like, I don't know that they really cared against Georgia State. They thought they could just go out there and just outplay them, because, hey, we're Vandy from the SEC. You're Georgia State from the Sun Belt. Doesn't really matter, right? And I think they had that mindset. Against Kentucky, they knew, hey, this guy is a certified track star, Barry Brown. He can burn us. we need to play tight. We need to get after Brock Vandagriff. We need to get hands in his face. We need to get bodies coming at him, pressing him, forcing him to make a decision and make it quickly, because he hadn't proven that he makes good decisions in those situations. So, but anyway, Clark Lea, midseason coach of the year. That's the gist. Proud of him, proud of this program, and they're going to have to show it and prove it that it's actually legit. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys. Hope to see you guys here next time. We'll talk more about Ball State. We'll get you into the weekend, and that'll be that. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Anchor down, behave yourselves. Peace.